Hey, it's Chris from The Chris Stefanic Show, where we dive into how to live a more joyful life every day in your everyday life, the kind of life that God dreams of for you. Check it out. Another key, beautiful theme that's really Catholic is that spiritual theme of attachment. You know, all the great mystics of the church, the spiritual life's all about detachment, not in a way where we become like Buddha and don't care, but letting go of things so that we're free to love. Instead of self-negation, it's the path to self-actualization through love, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's that spiritual battle that's, I think, it's the central theme of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, right? And there's a similarity here between Bilbo and Smaug, and spill that thread out for us.
Well, again, you're absolutely true. So the ring teaches us that the thing possessed possesses the possessor.
The thing possessed possesses the possessor.
We become possessed by our possessions, right? If we attach to them, we can't actually escape from them. They become shackles. And in the Hobbit, you're completely correct. The whole of the Hobbit really is a meditation, a contemplation of St. Matthew's Gospel, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And at the beginning of the Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins is trapped in his comfort zone. He's a creature of comfort, addicted to the creature comforts. You know, and so that's why Gandalf says you have to go on an adventure. You have to get out of here. You have to leave your possessions behind. You have to basically lay everything aside and go on this adventure because it will be good for you. And at the end of the story, you know, Gandalf says, "You're not the Hobbit you were." You know, because he's not, and it's very symbolic when he returns back to the Shire after the adventure. They're selling all of his possessions because they think he's dead. Right? He's dead, we're going to sell his possessions. Well, this is a symbolic rising from the dead because the old Bilbo Baggins, the one who was possessed by his possessions, has died. And it's the new resurrected Bilbo Baggins who's freed from his possessions who returns home.
And you said the real difference between Bilbo and Smaug, it's a question of scale.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't beat a good pun. Yeah. So Smaug lives in. Smaug's a big dragon living under a mountain, and it's no coincidence that Bilbo Baggins lives under hill.
Hill.
So it's just just a difference in scale.
Yeah. There was one time where Tolkien really showed his hand with Wormtongue, with the naming of Wormtongue, with the treatment of Wormtongue. That this is not just a battle between good guys and bad guys. This is a battle between good people who follow God and demons and demonic forces. Spill that out for us.
Well, obviously we need to remember that Tolkien was a professor of Anglo-Saxon, a linguist at Oxford University. So the language of the Anglo-Saxons is the language of Beowulf, for instance, and the Old English word, the Anglo-Saxon word for dragon is worm, W-Y-R-M. So Wormtongue means dragon tongue or serpent tongue, right? And so in the exchange with Gandalf and Theoden and Wormtongue, Gandalf says, "See, Theoden, here is a snake." And then he says to Wormtongue, "Down on your belly, snake." And then Wormtongue hisses his reply. I mean, the symbolism that takes us back to Genesis is palpable.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The ring. Through a Catholic perspective, how do I understand this object?
Yeah, well, the ring basically is the act of sin. So when you put the ring on, you basically excommunicate yourself from the good world that God made. So you're invisible to the eyes of goodness and the good cosmos, but you become more visible than ever to Sauron because you enter his world. You've excommunicated yourself from God and you've entered Satan's dominion. So he can see you, you become invisible everywhere else. So the act of putting on the ring is the act of sin. If you put on the ring habitually or keep it on for too long, you shrivel. I can't think of a more realistic depiction of the psychological impact of habitual sin than Gollum. That's what happens to our soul. If we allow ourselves to become addicted to sin, we shrivel, we shrink, we become a pathetic caricature of the good hobbit God made us to be. So that's that. But then the other side of it is if you are carrying the weight of sin without committing a sin, the ring at this point, if you're a ring bearer and not a ring wearer, the ring becomes the cross. You are carrying the weight of sin without sinning yourself. You become a cross bearer. So Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins, in this sense, as ring bearers, are cross bearers, and therefore Christ figures.
I was sharing your insight about this with my little girl Clementine from your book and from your videos on this topic. She's 10, and she was blown away by that one, as was I. It's profound. You know?
It is absolutely profound.
She's like, wow, Jesus, he was bearing the weight of the sin of the world, just like Frodo toward the end. Who's the hero? Who's the hero of the whole narrative?
Well, ultimately, you know, I'm reminded here of the words of Evening Moore about Brides Heavily Visited, when he says that the theme of the novel is the working of divine grace in the lives of closely related individuals. The hero of The Lord of the Rings ultimately is God. Because it's him that delivers Middle-earth from the power of the ring at the end through providence. Because Gollum is there. And you might think, oh, hang on a second, Gollum? You know, how can Gollum be so important? You know, as an agent of grace, because Frodo Baggins cannot go like this. He can't throw the ring into the cracks of doom. And that's the easy part, right? But he can't do it because it's too heavy, right? It's too powerful. And it's not what Tolkien is showing us is the error of Pelagianism. You cannot overcome the power of evil through the triumph of your own will. You need supernatural assistance, you know, which theologians call grace, right?
Yeah.
So then you think, well, hang on, so Gollum is grace, right? The supernatural assistance that comes at the last moment. Yes, because at the beginning of the story, Bilbo Baggins says to Gandalf, Frodo says to Gandalf, I wish Uncle Bilbo had destroyed that miserable creature, Gollum, when he had the chance. It's a pity he didn't. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed his hands. And I'm sure he has a role to play yet. And then later on, Frodo has the chance to kill Gollum, and he also says, now I do see him, I do pity him, and he stays his hand. Later, Sam also has the opportunity, and he stays his hand. So on 3 separate occasions, 3 separate hobbits obeyed the most difficult commandment of all, to love thine enemy. And if any of them had failed in that commandment, Gollum would not have been there at the crucial moment, and the power of the ring would not have been destroyed. So this was a reward for acts of grace, acts of virtue.
That's awesome. I had never thought of that. Like the hero is this one who's not even mentioned overtly in all 3 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That is incredible.
Yeah, but who is the Lord of the Rings? The Lord of the Rings ultimately is the Lord of the universe.
Yeah,
that's the Lord of the Rings.
That's it.
And that's the thing that Tolkien is playing with, right? Lord of the Rings. What is that? Sauron, right? No, it's the one ultimately who has power over Sauron. Above all shadows rises the sun. It's the Lord of the universe.
Another very Catholic thing is that unseen force is working through a fellowship.
Yes.
You know,
exactly.
it's so in this regard, it's not just Christian or evangelical work. It's a profoundly Catholic work, because more than any other church, we drive home the more importance of the whole communion of saints, and he's working through our fellowship.
Yeah.
Man, wasn't that amazing? I get so much out of these conversations that I barely care if anybody else is watching, but I prefer, obviously, to share this great stuff with the world. So be sure to subscribe and share it with everybody you know, and we'll see you in the next video.